Good evening. First of all, just a quick remark to precise that I'm just the spokesman of a wider work group, and thus I share the credit for this data with some colleagues, namely Paolo Zanovello, Giovanni Cagnoni, Luigi Magnini, Andrea Meleri, and me, Michele Secco. And I would like also to thank the other colleagues and friends, both Italian and Algerian, that helped our research during our stay. I was pleasure. I had the chance to know them, and I'm looking forward to work with them again. The attention paid to the hydraulic structures in Thabudeos during our field work in Algeria in 2019 is a direct follow-up of the long-lasting tradition the University of Padova has in the field of study concerning ancient hydraulic systems, in particular Roman ones. This expertise dates back to the early 90s of the last century, when several books was published by a first group of study that carried on some pioneering works that are still seminal, and it has been represented again in recent years through the organization of several summer schools and conferences and the public publication of the related proceedings. Before taking into account in detail the water channel we focused on during our survey in March 2019, it should be wise to build a framework where it may be placed. Some water supply structures have been found in Thabudeos and immediately around it, such as an irrigation channel found northeast from the city and a Roman well that is still visible close to the hill. Similarly, also an important structure based on water consumption, the Therme, has been discovered in Thabudeos and excavated and studied by Touchard, Sel, then by Birbant, and recently by Professor Haji, even if the fact that Birbant used in his book a wrong plan could suggest that in reality he didn't see the bath. Some important water structures have been discovered also outside the city and have been published by Birbant himself, who shed some light on some irrigation channels in the plain around Thabudeos, and by Professor Haji, as we have seen before, who first published the channel together with two more, we then surveyed in detail. I take also this opportunity also to express our gratitude to Professor Haji for being here, and we hope that some joint work on this structure and on the hydraulic landscape around the city could be carried on. The zone under investigation is the wide plain comprised between the cities of Atuda and Biskra, closed on north by Jebel Burezal, the latest offshoot of Mount Aures, known in Roman times as Mons Aurasius. The area is crossed by the Sidi Khalil provincial road connecting from El Kerze and the road National number 31, and through it to Biskra. Even if this region is at the northern border of the Saharan area, it is quite rich under an hydrological point of view, thanks to the wealth of springs and subterranean hydric resources, as well as to the availability of water given by Oued El Abiod, that now supplies the Fumegerza Dam, built by the French administration during the colonial period. The structure is split in two parts by the provincial road. On the north part, from the road, some preliminary data were available thanks to the Professor Haji's report, as well as some heavy markings in the aerial or satellite photos, while the southern area had no data from previous survey and more blood traces. As for the part of the plain situated north of the road, the evidences of the aqueduct were first followed through the historical series of aerial photo available at Google Earth Pro, and then the evidences were ground controlled with an intensive survey. The study of the aqueduct segment located south of the provincial road was indeed conducted mainly through remote sensing data and subsequently with targeted ground controls. The data available, which had an adequate resolution for the identification of the structure, were derived from the historical series provided by Google Earth Pro, that offers a complete overview of the area over the last 15 years, thus granting a reference for cross-validation, even if chronologically limited. During the investigation, 23 satellite images of the target area acquired between 2005 and 2019 were analyzed and interpreted. In the area south from the provincial road, these results highlighted a rather linear trail of the aqueduct measuring approximately 1.6 kilometers with a direction from northwest to southeast. The ground truth controls were carried out in March 2019 during a field survey over a portion of 700 meters in an area where the foundations and part of the aqueduct were still in place and clearly visible. Topographically, the aqueduct trace moves from northwest to southeast, especially extending east of the Thabudeos site, but interrupting a little less than 3 kilometers north from the site. At the present state of the investigation, it is not possible to prove a direct connection with the city itself, but a relationship seems very likely. The survey, carried out on the hydraulic structure flagged by Professor Agi and more broadly detected thanks to the remote observation, revealed three different building methods, even if in a small area. This fact clearly shows the ability to adapt the project and the realization of the infrastructure to the geological and geomorphological aspects of the area where the infrastructure itself was intended to be built. Nevertheless, at the moment, it was not possible to identify the most upstream part of the channel, as well as the springs supplying the aqueduct. Even if it is arguable, they are located in the near hydrogeological basin of the Jebel Bur-Rezal mountain. The most upstream part of the structure that was possible to detect, that at the moment we will define as an aqueduct in the etymological sense of this word, consists on some traces on the ground that, even if they were barely noticeable, we propose to read as a shaft of the underground stretch of the aqueduct. We were able to find the upper part of two wellheads about 20 meters far from each other. This construction appears as squares of about 1.2 meters, corresponding to 4 pedals, for each side, and made with stones and fine plasters. The angles were made with great accuracy, as well as the inner sides, that have regular and smooth walls. Unfortunately, it was not possible to find out any other shaft upwards on the channel path, but in the next years, a more systematic survey could lead to further finds. The great majority of the aqueduct track mapped up to this moment is conversely constituted by a channel mainly built in a trench with some retaining walls as sidewalls and a thick and sturdy foundation as base. These findings are about 40 centimeters wide on average, and each of them is built with 2 vertical rows of cobblestones arranged on the basis of an herringbone pattern. This masonry composition gives to the walls a higher strength and at the same time ensures a better thermal insulation for the water flowing through the channel. The base of the aqueduct is well known through the direct observation of some exposed sections due to the collapse of some little stretches of the structure. It is composed by several layers of mortar and stones, truly selected for their dimension and arranged in different ways according to the precise functions of the layer. The channel bottom layer is made of a rough mortar used to create a quite uniform horizontal floor, constituting the bed on the bare ground of the wall structure. A thicker layer of concrete with medium-sized stones as aggregates, horizontally arranged and overlapped one another, was laid over it. One more mortar layer, even if more refined than the previous one, detached this cementitium sheet from the upper one, built with smaller cobbles placed vertically. A sample dimension section of the channel has been elaborated by Giovanni Cagnoni in order to highlight the several building arrangements of the channel as well as the materials constituting it. The inner part of the channel was made with some coats of mortar progressively more refined, reaching in total a thickness of about 10 centimeters. The thin film of concrete with the coarse small cobbles as aggregates was applied in the lower part of the channel in order to regularize the roughness of the base of the structure and to give to the upper layers better grip. The other two layers covered the bottom of the channel as well as the side walls, and it's important to notice that their mortar coated even the upper part of the spallettes, highlighting the coherence in the structure planing. In some parts of the channel track, a third layer is placed on the bottom of the channel over the previous two. It could be assumed that these stretches with a supplementary mortar bed were placed to adjust the channel slope. Some chemical and petrographic analysis have been carried out on the binding materials by Dr. Michele Secco, who is here, whose conclusions I will briefly summarize, but I'm sure that Michele will be happy to give any further detail you will require. The multi-analytical characterization study on the two samples of binding materials taken from the Thabudeos Roman aqueduct allowed determining their main compositional and textural properties. Both samples can be categorized as typical cacio-pesto binders, composed of a mixture of lime and crushed ceramics, with an additional inert aggregate fraction constituted of rounded quartz grains of clear local origin, as demonstrated by the rounding shapes typical from aeolian erosion in desertic environments. As for the crushed ceramic particles used as aggregate, their highly amorphous composition related to the adoption of high temperatures in oxidizing conditions confers them marked pozzolanic properties, as demonstrated by the observed interfacial dissolution features. Coming back to the archaeological features, the vast majority of the channel we were able to survey doesn't show any coverage that was likely taken out in post-classical ages. Very likely, a short stretch of aqueduct with 3 rectangular sesquipedales bricks in a row as a roof has been discovered. Their measures can also give us a first confirmation that the dating of this structure has to be put in Roman age. The last construction typology that the aqueduct has shown is made up of a stretch, actually very short, of channel on arches. This part had to overcome an ancient riverbed, maybe to be identified as the ancient Vue de la Biode, and this led to build 4 arches, few of which are present barely identifiable without an excavation, that linked up 2 embankments with the stone external parements on the river cliffs. The arches are built using the same sesquipedales bricks with which the channel was covered. Thanks to their arrangement on the cut edge, it was possible to know also their thickness, that was about 7 centimeters, following the Roman standards. Since it was not possible to perform excavations, we were not able to identify the length of the lower chords of the arches, but they could likely be of about 2 pedals. From some very preliminary observation, the abandonment phase of the site and the stop to the aqueduct maintenance played a role on the landscape shaping processes. The abandoned arches of the aqueduct could act as a dam to the web, causing the landfilling of the river course. In this sense, it could be significant to look at the different grain size of the sediments, upstream, thicker, and downstream, finer of the arches. The very preliminary stage of the research presented here suggests much more research perspective and still lingering doubts than any conclusion that could, in any case, be presented with caution. The structure clearly shows, however, good planning and construction. This is self-evident looking at the number and quality of construction methodologies that were used in order to overcome topographical and land-related issues. At the same time, the materials used to build the channel, such as the strong, thick masonries, the well-refined mortars, and the carefully chosen building materials, are a good indication of how the structure was important for those who commissioned its realization. In any case, judging by the construction materials themselves, at this stage there is no reason to doubt about the belonging to the Roman period for the channel. For these reasons, beyond the fact that its path is not oriented in the same direction of the agrarian irrigation water channels reported by Birband, we suggest to assume it as the aqueduct, or one of the aqueducts, supplying the Roman towns of Thabudeos. Obviously, some more evidences that could confirm this idea will come from the further investigation, in particular checking the connection between this structure and the town of Thabudeos itself, as well as with the hydraulic equipments within it. Similarly, it is priority to complete and systematize the survey in both the directions, towards the end as well as toward the catching point of the aqueduct, including a vast buffer zone that will reconstruct the hydraulic landscape of this plain. It is in fact essential to reconstruct the whole hydraulic scape around Thabudeos, enriching a framework at the moment based mainly on the works by Stefan Xel, Jean Bardath, Jean Birband. The results coming from this study will contribute to further develop the still ongoing debate concerning the role of hydraulic infrastructures to the growth of urban settlements in Roman North Africa, as well as their response to the ancient climate change. At the same time, some archaeological excavation carried out in crucial points of the aqueduct, such as, for instance, one part of the underground channel with a shaft and the part with the channel on arches, could be of great value. Investigating this last point will also provide a number of information concerning the evolution of the landscape in this area, in particular the role of the Wed Elabiod in the formation, development and destruction of the Roman age landscape. Thank you.